What on guys, Fad here, and welcome to a new type of video, a new style of video. So what I'm going to be doing today is a Star Wars fan fiction. Now, I'm sure you know what a fan fiction is because you've seen them all across YouTube, but if you don't know, then I'll just quickly run down. So what the basis of this is that I take an element of the Star Wars universe and change it in some way, usually flipped. So if something does happen, it doesn't happen, and then if something doesn't happen, see what happens if it does happen, and see the unexplored consequences of that particular thing happening. So what we're going to be starting off with today is what if Ahsoka didn't leave the Jedi Order. Now, for this scenario, let's say Ahsoka did not leave the Jedi Order and continued her training to become a Jedi Knight. This, I feel, will change a number of things, especially now we know what happens in Clone Wars Season 7. So we start our alternate story just before the Battle of Coruscant, where Bo-Katan asks the Jedi for help in fighting against Maul. Obi-Wan says in order to help, he would need the Jedi Council's approval, and Anakin and Ahsoka would reluctantly agree. A side note, the reason why I think it would plan out this way is because in the Clone Wars, Ahsoka was approached by Bo-Katan when she was no longer part of the Order, and such she doesn't follow their ways anymore. Whereas here, and this part of the this alternate timeline, she's still part of the Jedi Order, which she needs to follow with what they say, however much she doesn't agree with it. Unfortunately for Bo-Katan, just as Obi-Wan is going to ask the Council, an alert comes from Coruscant saying it's been attacked by General Grievous and Count Dooku, and they have captured the Chancellor. But this time, instead of just Obi-Wan and Anakin going to rescue him, Ahsoka goes as well. A side note here, the only reason why I think Ahsoka was part of the Battle of Mandalore was because she wasn't part of the Jedi Order, but in this timeline she has a loyal duty to protect Coruscant, and I think she would also join Obi-Wan and Anakin in their attempt to rescue the Chancellor, considering she is now a Jedi Knight and no longer a Padawan. I think the battle with Dooku would have gone more or less the same, because I do believe that Palpatine was to blame for Dooku being able to best Obi-Wan, and because of this he would do the same with Ahsoka. Except instead of just knocking her unconscious, he would simply just knock her out temporarily and she would wake up to see Anakin behead Dooku, while the events with Obi-Wan would play out the same. After rescuing the Chancellor, Anakin, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, who is now awake, head to the Bridge of the Invisible Hand, and this time I think with the three of them they would have bested Grievous. However, Palpatine would know this, and he would need Grievous to escape in order to fulfill his plan to get Anakin and Obi-Wan separated. So I believe he would do the same trick he did during the Count Dooku fight to allow Grievous to escape. The events continuing would happen as they would do normally, with Anakin having nightmares about Padme's death, but Ahsoka would notice this and ask Anakin what's wrong, but Anakin would keep it from her and to not let her know that he was teaching her the ways of the Jedi, but not completely following them altogether. Obi-Wan will go to Utapau to kill Grievous, and Anakin would find out that Palpatine was a Sith Lord and would eventually turn to the dark side. A note here, I don't think Ahsoka staying would be a big enough reason to prevent Anakin from turning to the dark side, as Anakin cared more about Padme than anyone else, and it was the relationship he never expressed with anyone, not even Obi-Wan, so I don't believe Ahsoka would be enough of a reason to prevent this from happening. Ahsoka, who would be at the temple studying at this time, will sense a disturbance in the Force, much like she did on the Venator during the Clone Wars, but at this time it would be much closer to the events as they happen, and she could go and find Anakin and make sure everything's okay. However, as she was preparing to leave, she'd hear an explosion from the entrance as hundreds of thousands of clone troopers run into the temple firing at the Jedi. Ahsoka would run into the temple with other Jedi, killing any clones that were in her way to a point where the clones are not yet secured. Ahsoka would try and get an emergency comm out, but nothing would work as the clones had blocked all frequencies. Ahsoka would be wondering what to do when she realised there was an access vent around the back of the temple where she and the others could escape from. She got outside of the vent and told the other Jedi to jump onto transports and run into the underground and wait for the Jedi Council's signal, as she did the same. Hours went past and everything kind of calmed down, but still tense at the same time, feeling the deaths of all of her friends through the Force and seeing smoke pouring out of the temple. Then she felt the familiar presence of Obi-Wan and Yoda, and then saw Bail Organa's ship, the Tantive 4, heading towards the temple. Ahsoka, after much thought, decided to go and see if she could find them, and after following Obi-Wan and Yoda's presence through the Force, and following the trail of dead clones that were guarding the temple, she found Obi-Wan and Yoda walking through the temple. She would be delighted to see them, and she told them what had happened, and they would assure her that she was now safe. Obi-Wan and Yoda would continue their investigation, and would change the temple's alert, but would then find out the security recordings of Anakin killing the Jedi in the temple. Yoda would say he would go and fight Sidious himself, and that it was Obi-Wan's job to deal with Anakin, where Ahsoka would insist that she join him. In the search for Anakin, I think Ahsoka would go and speak to Padme herself instead of Obi-Wan, as I feel Padme would trust what Ahsoka says rather than Obi-Wan himself. Either that or they both go and speak to her, and though both of them saying the same thing would convince Padme more, although she would not show it. Padme would race to the Mustafar to find Anakin, while Ahsoka and Obi-Wan would hide aboard her ship, and when they land on Mustafar, Ahsoka would be shocked at the state of her former master. As Obi-Wan walked down the ship with Ahsoka next to her, Anakin was stuck to force choke Padme, much as before. But this time Ahsoka, whose reflexes are much better and quicker than Obi-Wan's due to her younger age, would use the Force to break Anakin's grip on Padme and pull her towards the ship. This would infuriate Anakin, and they would start their lightsaber fight, but this time without talking at all, as the only thought on Anakin's mind would be to kill Ahsoka and Obi-Wan for taking Padme from him. The fight would ensue much like it did before, with Obi-Wan being the main one fighting with Anakin, and Ahsoka would jump in when she could. A side note here, the reason why I don't think Anakin would have bested Ahsoka is because in an interview with Dave Filoni, he said that Anakin trained Ahsoka to fight much bigger opponents than her, opponents like Darth Vader. And while he was referring to Vader in Rebels, I do believe that with the help of Obi-Wan leading the fight with Anakin, she would be able to hold her ground. Ahsoka would remember all the clones bursting into the Jedi Temple and mercilessly killing every man, woman and child that stood in front of them. All her friends, teachers and students that she had fought alongside, learnt from and taught over her life, just being gunned down in front of her face, and then to realise all of that was because of Anakin. Eventually, Anakin would make a critical mistake, which in the normal timeline he would narrowly survive, but this time, because he had two Jedi to fight, he would narrowly miss from Obi-Wan but would get caught out by Ahsoka, who would disarm Anakin, where Obi-Wan would use force push on Anakin to push him into the wall and knock him unconscious. Ahsoka would hold her lightsaber to Anakin's throat with tears in her eyes, wanting to kill him for all that he has done to the Jedi, but Obi-Wan would tell her it is not the Jedi way, and once we regroup with Yoda, they would decide what to do. Knowing the Emperor would be here soon to rescue his apprentice, Obi-Wan, Padme and Ahsoka would go with the unconscious Anakin to regroup with Bail Organa, who had rescued Yoda. Padme would then give birth to two healthy twins, who she would name Luke and Leia, and in this scenario she would survive childbirth. A side note here, the reason why I think it would play out like this is because I personally believe that Padme died because Palpatine was drawing her life energy in order to keep Vader alive during his reconstruction. Anakin by this point would have woken up but would be detained in a cell in Polis Massa. Ahsoka would be standing outside Anakin's cell, staring at her master with tears in her eyes, but all she would see is the piercing yellow Sith eyes of Darth Vader. Obi-Wan would walk up behind her, put a hand on her shoulder and say that he and Yoda needed her help. After much discussion, Yoda, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka came to a joint decision that for the safety of the Skywalker children, Anakin must be killed, and the children should be separated. Another note here, I believe considering the state of the galaxy, I don't believe it was possible to rejoin with the Jedi and put Anakin on trial because of his crimes. One, because all the Jedi were pretty much dead from either Anakin or Order 66, but also because by this time the Emperor has formed the Empire and turned the Senate on the Jedi, so any attempt to try Anakin would not work. So I think execution of Anakin would be the only option, and the children would still have to be separated due to the risk shown by the Emperor and the eventual Inquisitors that be recruited by the Emperor. After Anakin's execution, Obi-Wan, Yoda and Ahsoka would part ways. Yoda telling the two they would need to go into exile, but when the time is right, he would indeed call on them for help. Obi-Wan would go and take Luke to Tatooine, Bail would take Leia and Padme to Alderaan, Yoda would go to Dagobah and Ahsoka would go to Tabasca, until one day Yoda would signal for them to come and help him. Across the galaxy, Palpatine, who while reeling from the death of his newly formed apprentice, would have a new highly talented Force user who would be the new Lord of the Sith, and to fill the shoes that Vader could not, the Grand Inquisitor. So I hope you guys enjoyed my first fan fiction, and as I create more they will continue to get better and better, and I might come back to this one and redo it. But this is the way I do think the timeline would go if Ahsoka didn't leave. Ahsoka to me didn't seem like a big enough reason for Anakin to rejoin the Jedi, as she, like Obi-Wan, represented what was keeping him from the secrets that would save Padme, and because of this timeline of Star Wars would play out much like it did before, but rather with Padme surviving, Anakin being killed and Ahsoka, Obi-Wan and Yoda knowing of each other's survival. So if you'd like me to do a part 2 to this, I'll be more than happy, and if you have any other suggestions of other fanfictions, leave them in the comment section down below. I'm trying to take the channel into a new direction at the moment. Not uploading particularly consistently, but making sure that the videos I do upload are of the highest quality. I can by thinking up some new varied ideas and spending more time editing those videos as well, and I'm working on Trader in the background. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Again, it's a little bit different, but it's one that I've wanted to do for a while, but because I've been so flat out with Trader and other YouTube ideas, I've not really had the chance to do. So, hope you guys have enjoyed, and if you did enjoy, don't forget to smash the like button and hit the subscribe button for awesome gaming video type content of any particular sorts, and I shall see you all later. Bye!